Namaste all, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 787 with the bottom paragraph, birth then is a necessity.
Yeah. So, we are in the chapter, the philosophy of rebirth. So, Sriyendra has been exploring. He is not going to tell you that rebirth is a fact and that definitely it is there and all that. He is going in a very, very systematic manner. He is looking at, is it really possible or not? Okay. So, under what conditions is rebirth necessary? So, he has looked at various philosophies. He has looked at Mayavada, he has looked at Elan Vital of Bergson, he has left at several others, and he has come to the conclusion that birth is not necessary if there is no evolution and if the individual is not a reality. Because in many philosophies, there is no individuality. In your in the materialistic theory, there is no individual. There is just a body-mind life which is born and dies, that's all. So, there is no question of soul for materialism. Then in Buddhism also, it's the same. It's a shunyam. So, the individual is something not existing. So, then rebirth is not necessary there. Then finally, he has come to his own philosophy and he says that there is a evolution, and in the evolution, there is an individual who is real. And in this evolution, there is first of all a general evolution from matter to life to mind, and in that process, the individual is the one who is taking the evolution forward. So, if these two things are granted, then the possibility of rebirth is there. Now, he is further discussing other things. So, we will just have a look at that. Yeah. So, I will do one thing. I will read the summary of the previous para so that we get the continuity. Now, there is another thing. Even if a soul is there and it's a one-time descent and you have a one-time life and then the soul goes away, then also there is no need of rebirth. In the Christian theory, a soul is created, comes into the body, and at the end of that life period when there is death, the soul goes back either to heaven or to hell. There is no question of rebirth. So, rebirth is necessary when there is an evolution and the individual has to take the evolution forward. Then rebirth is necessary. So, I am reading out what he said in the previous para. If there is no need of self-finding, you have to realize who you are. That is self-finding, realization of oneself. Evolution and rebirth need not have come into existence. So, there has to be that the soul is trying to find itself. If it is not trying to find itself, the question of rebirth is not even necessary. There is a spiritual experience in which only the bliss of play of the one with the many exists. This is the, as we discussed last time, is the Vaishnava philosophy of the divine is playing. It's a play in the universe. And if there is a play, it's just a play. There is no purpose. It just goes on endlessly, a game that is being repeated endlessly, but there is no evolution. Now, this is an experience that you do have in the spiritual planes of existence. But if you stop there and say that's the only truth, then again rebirth is not necessary. The divine is just playing with himself. There is no purpose. The only purpose is enjoyment. And that is something does happen. You will come to a level of consciousness where you see Leela. The divine is playing here a game. But that's not the only truth. There are other aspects also. This is one aspect of spiritual experience. No spiritual experience in the spiritual planes is definite, is certain. It is not. All these spiritual experiences are relative. Only when you go to the third level of this supramental, then you find that there is a meaning and a purpose to evolution and manifestation. The divine has created the world with a purpose. That you discover only when you go beyond the spiritual planes into the supramental. So that's what is being said. If there was no need of self-finding, evolution and rebirth need not have come into existence. There is a spiritual experience in which only the bliss of the play of the one with the many exists. If this were all, without self-seeking, self-discovery, again evolution and rebirth would be superfluous, not necessary. But there is a need for self-seeking. An individual wants to know what he is and who he is, from where he has come. That being granted, there is a seeking. And if there is a seeking, it cannot be a one-time thing. You have to seek yourself through many, many lives, because the limitations here will not allow you to discover yourself in one life. That's not possible. So rebirth is necessary. Okay? So, if this were all, without self-seeking, self-discovery, again evolution and rebirth would be superfluous. But there is a need for self-seeking, because the supreme consciousness has involved itself in its apparent opposite, inconscience. The divine has come down into the opposite of himself and needs to rediscover itself under the conditions of an earthly existence. This need, the need to discover oneself, results in the inevitability of evolution and rebirth. So, it is true that the involution of the one, conscious and eternal, in the many, which is inconscience and transience, is only phenomenal. It's true that the physical world is phenomenal, not absolutely real. It is phenomenal, superficial, shallow in the unity of the consciousness, and resides as essence in the and the unity of the consciousness resides as essence in the infinite forms of the many. It is true that body-mind life is phenomenal. It is there today, it is not there tomorrow. But there is a soul lurking inside, and that is the one that is seeking itself in the ignorance. The one has become the many, but only seemingly, apparently. The divine one has manifested himself in the many as a soul in you, as a soul in me, as a soul in everybody else. But this is apparent only. This division is not real. It is phenomenal. Because when you go to another level of consciousness, you see that this division is an illusion. The division is illusion. All the souls are really essentially one. Somewhat like you can say, the fruits on a tree. Okay? Each fruit is the same essentially. So your soul, my soul, everybody else's soul is divine in essence. But it has come down here and put on a body-mind life many coverings, and that's why you feel you are looking only at the covering and saying they are all different. They are not different. Their soul is essentially one. Okay, so the conscious subtle has become the gross unconscious. This was necessary in order to give a basis of solidity, permanence, stability to matter, and it is the stability, unwillingness to change easily, that opposes, obstructs, frustrates the rise into the higher levels of consciousness. So, there has to be a stability here. If there is no stability, then each form is going on mutated, there will be no purpose, and it will be a chaos, total chaos. So, stability of forms has to be there. But if stability says, I won't allow you to change very easily. It is this stability which becomes the big obstacle to evolution. That's what he's saying.
Is it the ego?
Pardon?
Is it not the ego?
That's the ego, yeah, that's it.
Of course.
The produces this ego, okay? So, ego and body-mind life, okay? So, the ascent of evolution is possible and real, however slow, because it is there, it has to battle itself. It is slow. It is here that the individual's roles becomes imperative. It is he who initiates, triggers the upward ascent. Therefore, the individual is a true person. He must assume body after body and repeated attempts to grow out of his limitations. This is rebirth. The necessity of evolution in time, it cannot be done in one level, so there has to be rebirth. He has to come back again and again here and experience and find out who he really is. This is what he has said in the previous para. So now he has established the fact that birth is necessary and rebirth will be necessary if evolution is there, and he has shown that evolution is there and the individual is real. Okay. In many philosophies there is no individual, but he has told you what his philosophy is. He has told us there is an evolution and the individual is very necessary to it, and you can see the evolution from matter to life to mind. So evolution is there, but the individual is the one who realizes who he is and takes it forward. So then birth now. I am reading the next para. Birth then is a necessity of the manifestation of the Purusha on the physical plane. But this birth, his birth, whether the human or any other, note interestingly. So even animals have this birth has to take place. So even they undergo evolution. He will explain that very clearly now. Whether the human or any other cannot be in this world order an isolated accident or a sudden excursion of a soul into physicality without any preparation past to it or any fulfilling hereafter. The Christian theory says that is a one-time thing. So if it's a one-time thing, there is no purpose in evolution. Why at all did he come here? And then goes back. As I said last time, it is like, I don't have any work. I just go to Chennai and come back. So somebody will ask me, what did you do in Chennai? I said, I didn't do anything. So why did you go there at all? So when the soul comes down here once and goes back, what is it? There is no meaning in it.
But it's basic Christianity.
Yes. That's what they say. So it's meaningless. And evolution is not. That's why they have cancelled rebirth.
Exactly.
They have cancelled rebirth. Okay, so without any preparation past to it or any fulfilling hereafter. In a world of evolution and involution and evolution, not the physical form only, but of conscious being through life and mind to spirit, such an isolated assumption of life in the human body could not be the rule of the individual's soul's existence. So it cannot be. See, it's not the body that is evolving. It is the soul that is evolving. Okay, that's what he's saying. It would be quite meaningless and inconsequential arrangement, a freak for which the nature and system of things here have no place, a contrary violence which would break the rhythm of the spirit's self-manifestation. It is a self-spirit that is you have to remember many things. It is a spirit which has manifested here. And the spirit being divine in essence, it cannot remain trapped in the body, mind, life forever. It will try to escape. So self-seeking is essential because it is divine who has manifested here. And if self-seeking is there, evolution is necessary. And if evolution is necessary, it can't be done in one life, so it has to come back again and again. These are the logical steps he has given. Okay, so we should break the rhythm of the spirit. The intrusion of such a rule of individual soul life in an evolutionary spiritual progression would make it an effect without cause and a cause without effect. There will be no meaning in it if it's a one-time thing. Okay? There has to be a series. Provided you agree that evolution is necessary and the individual is necessary. Both the things are denied by many. The materialist says there is no evolution. The Buddhist says there is no individual. But Shinto says both are there. Okay? Then only rebirth becomes necessary. So, abiding in this here. The life of the individual must have the same rhythm of significance, the same law of progression as the cosmic life. We see that there is a cosmic life. There is a matter first, then there is life, and there is mind. That everybody can see. That's evolution. So the individual is coming into the evolution. So he has to follow the laws of the evolution. And if there is evolution in the physical world, then he has to be submitted to that law also. That's another way of looking at it. Okay, so its place in that rhythm, the rhythm of the universal manifestation, cannot be a stray, purposeless intervention. It must be an abiding instrumentation of the cosmic purpose. Whatever purpose there is in the cosmos, the individual has to submit to it and help it also. That's what he's saying. Okay, so neither in such an order can we explain an isolated advent. One birth of the soul in a human body, which would be its first and last experience of the kind, by previous existence in other worlds, with a future before it, in yet other fields of experience. There are subtler fields of experience, it has to go there. So, for here, life upon earth, life in the physical universe, is not and cannot be a casual perch for the wanderings of the soul from world to world. The word perch is very interesting. Casual perch. You come here, stay here, and then you go away. It's like a bird which comes and stays on a branch and then flits away. There's no purpose, it just sits there and goes away. See, if the soul is doing that, no purpose, no meaning. Okay, so for here, life upon earth, life in the physical universe, is not and cannot be a casual perch on the wanderings of the soul from world to world. It is a great and slow development, needing, as we now know, incalculable spaces of time for its evolution. Evolution is very slow. We even know scientifically that after matter was there, when life came, it took 1,000,000 years. So, it's a very slow process. Human life is itself only a term in the graded series through which the secret spirit in the universe develops gradually his purpose and works it out finally through the enlarging and ascending individual soul consciousness in the body. It's a soul consciousness that is slowly evolving in consciousness. This ascent can only take place by rebirth, within the ascending order. An individual visit, coming across it and progressing on some other line elsewhere, could not fit into the system of this evolutionary existence. So, I read out the summary which will give you the whole idea in a very terse manner, summary manner. The universal Purusha, the divine, manifesting on earth in an individual human body is what we call birth. So, what is birth? It's the individual, the divine Purusha taking birth and coming into the physical world with the body, mind, life. That is birth. This birth cannot be a once only event without prior preparation and subsequent follow-up and future consummation. So, the Christian theory is dismissed entirely. This once only birth of a soul in a human body or any body, it could be an animal body also, would be meaningless and without purpose. It would be without an aim, without a cause, nor would there be a fulfilling effect. Such a freak accident can have no place in an evolutionary world. It would be a fragmentary present without a preparatory past and a fulfilling, satisfactory future. A one-time thing has no meaning at all. There is neither a past nor a future. Evolution must take place here on earth itself and nowhere else. Now that's another thing. The upper layers of consciousness are all static, silent. There is no creation, there is no movement. So,
Typal.
Yeah, typal beings, they are all typal. Whereas here, there is movement. And evolution can take place only in movement. If there is no movement in the upper planes, how can there be a movement? So that's what he's saying. Evolution must take place here on earth itself and nowhere else. We may note that progress implies movement and change, and an immutable, silent, static plane of consciousness cannot be the stage for the drama of evolution. So we must be very clear that evolution is possible only when you are in the physical world here, where there is movement and change. So you have to take a body, mind, life and evolve. So it's interesting. We know that Mother has said in many places that even if typal beings want to evolve more, Typal being is one who does not progress. In the vital world, there are elves and gnomes which don't evolve, they just exist. And their immortality is there also, they exist. In the mental worlds, Gandharvas, Kinnaras, what you call in Europe, angels, all these beings are there, but they don't evolve. So if they want to evolve by any chance at all, they have to take birth here. And there is a very interesting one case where Srimdo mentions about Percy Shelley, the poet.
He was not a human.
No, he was not, he was a typal being.
Typal being.
Who had to come down here for evolution. And that's why he developed his psychic being, and his poetry is all very, very psychic. The Skylark, yes, and other poems. Okay. So that's what Simla is saying. Therefore, rebirth, a repeated assumption of physical bodies, becomes an indispensable necessity. We may note that the evolution is double-edged. There is a physical, biological evolution which throws up complex organisms which are commensurate with the evolving consciousness of the developing soul. Now, this also we must be very clear. In Srimdo's evolution, it's a soul that is a development of consciousness. In the biological evolution, the physical forms are slowly evolving. You have a worm which has got only one sense. You have a snake doesn't hear. Okay, fish deep in the sea don't see. So one sense is lacking. So when you come, slowly all the senses are developing, and when you go, you have fully developed all your senses, you have to go into the subtle senses, into the next one. So there is a biological evolution. And now it's very interesting, just consider, can a worm have a consciousness of a cat? Not possible. The only sense it has is touch, tactile sense. So it can't. But a cat is far superior in that way to a worm, because it has got capacity to understand, seek food, reproduce itself. Then when you come to the mind level, man is obviously far superior to the animal. So there is a biological evolution also. So even for a spiritual being, there has to be a body which is commensurate with the spiritual consciousness. So even the Superman will have to have a body not like a physical body here, but that physical body must be capable of supramental behavior. So that is what Selva is pointing out here. So we must not confuse. The biological evolution is necessary. That is absolutely, but it's a corollary. It's not the essential. The essential evolution is consciousness. Okay? So there is a biological evolution which throws up complex organisms which are commensurate with the evolving consciousness of a developing soul. So, now we come to the next para. Okay, so nor is the human soul, the human individual, a free wanderer capriciously or lightly hastening from field to field according to its unfettered choice or according to its free and spontaneously variable action and result of action. So what he is saying is that the human soul cannot go on flitting from here, there by itself. It cannot do that. Okay? So he will explain. Unfettered choice and according to its free and spontaneously variable action and result of action. That is a radiant thought of pure spiritual liberty which may have its truth in planes beyond or in an eventual release, but is not true at first of the earth life. So, these beings which are there in the vital planes and the mental planes, they also don't go on flitting from here and here. They don't. Even when man develops spiritually, he is stationed in one plane. Okay? Now that's a very interesting thing, because a spiritual evolution, when you are at a mental plane or a spiritual plane. It is great effort that you have to make again to come back and develop your consciousness to go to another higher level. So, the being which is capable of only one level of spiritual consciousness is what Ramakrishna calls, what does he call I've just written it out and I've forgotten. It's called Jiva Koti. Jiva is the individual soul, and he can go to one level of consciousness. But a very developed soul can live on several levels of consciousness consciously. And that is a Jiva, Ishvara Koti.
Simultaneously.
Pardon?
Simultaneously.
Yes, that's right. So, even now, part of you is up there, but is unconscious. It is there in the spiritual plane, it is there in the supramental plane, it is there in the physical plane, only you are conscious of your existence. But when you become a yogi and you go to a higher level of consciousness, normally you are conscious only of that level. But if you are very developed, you can live consciously on various planes. So that is what Swami is pointing out. Okay, so he is saying, unfettered choice are according to Vri, that is a radiant thought of pure spiritual liberty, which may have its truth in planes beyond. And Swami is saying may have. It's possible if you are very developed to live on several planes at the same time. Okay? Or in an eventual release, but is not true at first of the earth life. Of life in the physical universe, that's not possible. The human birth in this world is, on its spiritual side, a complex of two elements, a spiritual person and a soul of personality. Now, person and personality, very clearly, when Sri Aurobindo uses the word person with a P cap, he is referring to the soul, the true individual. And when he is talking of personality, it is your character of the body-mind life, the outer, which is valid only for one life, and in the next life, you have to change your personality. It can't be the same personality. Normally, in common idea of rebirth in many, many places, very defective idea, is that Narad will be born again in the next life, but with the same characters. He may have a different body and different height and different color, but the person will be the same. All your consciousness will be, it's not like that, okay? That's what is being pointed out. There is a personality which goes on changing and a person who is developing very slowly and evolving, but that's the soul. So, person and personality, when you are reading Sri Aurobindo, be very careful. Person is the soul, and or rather even the psychic being, you can say. And personality is your outer nature of body-mind life. The former is man's eternal being. Spiritual person is eternal being, your soul. The latter, which is personality, is his cosmic and mutable being. The mutable being is your body-mind life. You are going on changing. When you are born, you are a baby, and when you are adult, you are already quite different. But it's the same. The soul is the same. But the personality is going on changing, mutable. Okay, so as the spiritual impersonal person, he is one in his nature and being with the freedom of Satchidananda. So, at the highest level, you are in Satchidananda, who has here consented to and willed his involution in the nations for a certain round of soul experience, impossible otherwise, and presides secretly over its evolution. If you want soul experience, you have to come down here. Okay? Impossible otherwise, and presides secretly over its evolution. As the soul of personality, now that's interesting. What is meant by the soul of personality? There is a spiritual soul, and there is also an essential part of your body-mind life. That's the soul of the personality. He is himself part of that long development of the soul experience in the forms of nature. His own evolution must follow the laws and lines of the universal evolution. Now that's interesting. Yes. In other words, whatever are the laws in the universe, you have come down into the universe, and you are only a small part of this universe. So you are subject to the laws of the universe. That's what he's pointing out. It is almost like if I migrate from here to America, my Indian laws won't operate. There will be American laws that operate there. So when you are in the university of the soul, it has to obey the laws of the universe. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, as a spirit, he is one with the transcendence, which is immanent in the world and comprehensive of it. As a soul, he is at once one with and part of the universality of Satchidananda, self-expressed in the world. His self-expression must go through the stages of the cosmic expression. That's a law he has to follow. His soul experience follows the revolutions of the wheel of Brahman in the universe. So now, we'll read out the summary, it will be clear to you. I'm going to read the summary. These are not said those words, but the basic, the essential idea is there. The human individual soul is not free. He is not wandering wantonly, moving about wherever he pleases between different worlds. That's not possible. That is a possibility only for the liberated soul in the highest ranges of experience. But it is not true of the average human in earthly life. Not possible. Man on earth is a complexity of two beings. One, an infinite being, a true spiritual person, which we call the soul or psychic being. And the other, a soul of personality, largely subject to Prakriti. Prakriti means body, mind, life. So there is a soul of nature also. Your nature. Okay, that is what is evolving. This real soul is not evolving. It's the soul of the personality that is slowly evolving. In other words, when the soul projects itself into a body, mind, life, it is that soul which is evolving. Okay? There is a little difference between a pure divine soul and a soul that has come down here into and trapped itself willingly in body, mind, life. So that is the soul which is evolving. That's the soul of personality. Okay, so man on earth is that we read. Okay, so person is Purusha, soul. Personality, Prakriti, outer nature of body, life and mind. The first is the eternal, transcendent being, and the soul of personality is the human soul that has consented to the fall into earthly existence. It is therefore divine only in essence, but now subject to the play of Prakriti. It is a prisoner of nature. It is covered up by the thick layers of gross nature, your body, your life and your mind. These three layers are covering the soul and causing ignorance. The first presides over the progressive growth of consciousness of the second, which is very much a part of universal mechanical nature. It is not free from the clutches of Prakriti and must escape from her in the great wheelings of growth. This is what he is saying. So, now
I wanted to say that sometimes this definition of soul is mixed.
Yes. Sriraurendu uses the word, he uses the word soul in a loose manner also. And when other than Sriraurendu they are using the word soul, there is a little bit of a confusion. They are not very clear as to what it means. Sometimes they even mean the vital being. Okay? The emotional part is the soul. They feel like that. But in Sriraurendu's terminology, the soul is a divine element in everything. In a stone, in a worm, in a cat, in a dog, in a man. But the psychic being is the soul which has developed its consciousness and come up to a certain level. Evolved. So you could say in a certain way, in a very gross manner, the soul is a seed. And the tree which is evolved out of that seed is a psychic being. You could say it this way. Even when you are a baby, you are the same when you are an adult, but you have evolved. So that's the difference between a soul and a psychic being. The soul, having evolved in consciousness through many lives, it becomes a psychic being. Okay? And there is a self. The self is also individual as well as universal. So there are three levels of the true individual. The soul, which is the divine element, willingly imprisoning itself in matter. Then there is the psychic being, which is conscious of itself. The first soul is not conscious of itself. It is developing and trying to become conscious of itself. Many, many human beings are not conscious of their soul. Okay? So only when you become a psychic being, you start realizing who you really are. Okay? Then there is a self, which is individual as well as universal.
Cap S.
Yes, cap as self. And that is static. It doesn't evolve. The soul and the psychic being evolve. But the self does not evolve. It only supports your existence here. So this is the difference between the three. Soul, psychic being and self. All are individual, but at different levels of consciousness. The universal spirit in things involved in the nations of the physical universe evolves its nature self in a succession of physical forms up the graded series of matter, life, mind and spirit. It emerges first as a secret soul in material forms, quite subject to the surface of the nations, like a stone. Okay? It emerges first in a secret soul, in material forms, a stone, quite subject on the surface to the nations. So the soul in the stone is absolutely sleeping in the stone. It is subject to the darkness of the stone. That's what Swami is saying. Okay? Then it develops as a soul, still secret, but about to emerge in vital forms that stand on the borders between nations and a partial lot of consciousness, which is our ignorance. So it develops, and when you become partly conscious as a life form, the life form is definitely more conscious than a stone. Then the mental being is even more conscious than an animal form. So that's what he is saying. Okay, so stands on the borders between nations and the partial light of a consciousness, which is our ignorance. It develops still further as the initially conscious soul in the animal mind, and finally as a more outwardly conscious but not yet fully conscious soul in man. So there is a consciousness in the stone is one, consciousness in the animal, but there are several levels in the animal also, as I said. A worm, a caterpillar, okay, a small being, and a cat, dog, and finally man. So there also there is a development. The stand on the borders, it develops still further, etc. Then the consciousness is there throughout in our occult parts of being. The development is in the manifesting nature. So the consciousness, this soul is there, the psychic being is there, but it is supporting the body-mind life and slowly evolving in body-mind life. Okay? Throughout in our occult parts of being, the development is in the manifesting nature. Okay? So you refer back to the Gita's Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hriddeshe Tishtati. The divine is there in everybody, but he is making the body-mind life turn like a machine. Okay? So that evolution is possible. Okay? So this evolutionary development has a universal as well as an individual aspect. So there is a universal, okay? The universal aspect is the biological evolution, and the individual aspect is the consciousness evolution. Okay? So there is a universal development. That's your biological forms are developing. That's universal. But the individual is spiritual, is the consciousness which is developing. The universal develops the grades of its being and the ordered variation of the universality of itself in a series of its evolved forms of being. Now this word forms of being means the various scales, unicellular, then slowly the worm, the caterpillar, the cat, dog. These are the, what Shakti is calling forms of being. Series of its evolved forms of being. The individual soul follows the line of this cosmic series and manifests what is prepared in the universality for the spirit. The universal man, the cosmic Purusha in humanity, is developing in the human race the power that has grown into humanity from below it and shall yet grow to supermind and spirit and become the Godhead in man, who is aware of his true and integral self and the divine universality of his nature. The individual must have followed this line of development. He must have presided over a soul experience in the lower forms of life before he took up the human evolution. So, this is what he means by you are subject to the laws of the evolution. So, when you come down here, when the divine soul comes down here, it becomes subject to the laws of the physical world. So, your soul would have been at one time even in the soul. Then slowly you would have been a worm and a caterpillar. So your consciousness has grown slowly there and come up to this level. It's not that you have straight away come into a human body. It cannot be. Okay, that's what Swami is pointing out. The individual must have followed this line of development. He must have presided over a soul experience in the lower forms of life before he took up the human evolution. As the one was capable of assuming in its universality these lower forms of the plant and animal, so must the individual, now human, have been capable of assuming them in his previous stage of existence. He now appears as a human soul, the spirit accepting the inner and outer form of humanity, but he is not limited by this form any more than he was limited in the plant or animal forms previously assumed by him. He can pass on from it to a greater self-expression in the higher scale of nature. In other words, just as he was capable of evolution even in the worm and the cat and the dog, similarly he is not bound to his body-mind life. Even here he can progress. That's what Swami is saying. And that is the need of rebirth. You have to keep coming back for rebirth. I read the summary. I think that's all we can do today. I read the summary of this.
Good.
The universal spirit involved in the inconscience evolved slowly through the grades of physical forms. Matter, life and mind, finally spirit. This spirit, evolving from material, vegetal, animal forms, finally assumes a human form. This evolution is twofold. A universal, which is a biological growth of more and more complex forms, and an individual growth of consciousness which occupies these forms in a parallel ascent. Okay? So, now, if a Superman has to appear, there has to be a biological evolution, if you want, or a spiritual evolution, which will have a body capable of housing the divine consciousness, the supramental consciousness. The human body is now capable of a spiritual consciousness, but not a supramental one. So it has to develop a body which is capable of that. Mind you also, interestingly, that the human soul can go up there. It can get. But it cannot bring down the supramental consciousness in the physical world unless there is a supramental body.
To support it.
Yeah. So that's a...
Yes.
Srebda has gone to the supramental world, mother has gone to the supramental world. But the body was here human. So if you have to bring down that's why Srebda said, I will manifest again in the first supramental body.
Built in the supramental way.
Yeah. Built in the, not biological way. That's it.
Right.
This evolution is twofold. A universal, which is a biological growth of more and more complex forms, and an individual growth of consciousness which occupies these forms in a parallel ascent. This evolution must terminate in the supermind, which is the next stage of a evolutionary series. The individual follows in the steps of the universal evolution and then becomes independent of the physical form. Though involved in the plant, animal and human forms, he can now assert his total freedom from these physical forms. That's what he said in the para. Now, Swami said that this is the way it works. The divine comes down into the body-mind life, submits himself to the laws of the physical world, which is ignorance, darkness, and slowly evolves. Now, could it be anything else? To suppose otherwise would be to suppose that the spirit which now resides over the human soul experience was originally formed by human mentality and a human body, exists by that, and cannot exist apart from it, cannot ever go below or above it. So in other words, you are stuck in the body-mind life. That is not possible. In fact, it would then be reasonable to suppose that it is not immortal, but has come into existence by the appearance of the human mind and body in the evolution, and would disappear by their disappearance. This is a materialistic theory. When the body goes, the soul also goes. But the body and mind are not the creators of the spirit. The spirit is the creator of the mind and body. It develops these principles out of its being. It is not developed into being out of them. It is not a compound of their elements or a resultant of their meeting. If it appears to evolve out of mind and body, that is because it gradually manifests itself in them, and not because it is created by them or exists by them. As it manifests, they are revealed as subordinate terms of its being and are to be finally taken up out of their present imperfection and transformed into visible forms and instruments of the spirit. Note, visible forms. So if a divine has to be here with the divine consciousness, he must be available here in a physical form. That's a necessity of a supramental body. Okay?
And the avatar.
Yeah. So, our conception of the spirit is of something which is not constituted by name and form, nama rupa, but assumes various forms of body and mind according to the various manifestations of its soul being. This it does here by successive evolution. It evolves successive forms and successive strata of consciousness, for it is not bound always to assume one form or no other, or to possess one kind of mentality which is its sole possible subjective manifestation. So what Shelly is saying is that every life you have a different situation. Otherwise you will not be able to develop yourself fully. So in other words, what it means is, in one life you may be a soldier. So what has your soul absorbed? The concept of courage, bravery. Next life you are maybe an artist. So what are you developing now? You are developing your sensitivity and sense of beauty. So this is what, every time you will have a different circumstance so that you can develop yourself fully in all the aspects. That's what. It cannot be a one-track thing. It has to be various. Okay, so this it does by successive evolution. It evolves successive forms and successive strata of consciousness, for it is not bound always to assume one form and no other, or to possess one kind of mentality which is its sole possible subjective manifestation. The soul is not bound by the formula of mental humanity. It did not begin with that, it will not end with that. It had a pre-human past, it has a superhuman future. This is what Srimli is saying. Now, the summary of this one. If we deny the spiritual future consummation for man, then we presuppose a human origin and a human end to the soul. In other words, you are not thinking that it can go up. It is limited. Okay. It cannot go beyond the human stage. But we must be clear that body, life, mind have not created a soul. It is spirit that creates everything else. It may appear that the spirit is issuing out of the inconscience, but that's an illusion. The illusion is due to the fact that spirit has involved itself voluntarily in the inconscience. It is now evolving upwards to find itself. The human soul is not bound by body-mind life. It has an infra-human stage and will have a supra-human future. The materialist says that everything has evolved from matter. Matter is the origin of all creation. That's a theory. So even your mind and your life, everything is from matter, it has come up. That's the origin. So you're saying no. The origin is there. It appears to be like this. There is an evolution out of matter and all that. But that evolution is because the supermind has involved itself in matter. That's what he's saying. It's the other way around. So that we stop here
Thank
today.
you, Ranga.
What we see of nature.
Namaste all. and we will see you again on Monday.